Being a landlord comes with a ton of responsibilities, some of which can be a real hassle, like uncooperative tenants and a loss in rental income. Another responsibility that landlords typically do not like dealing with is rental property maintenance. Conducting routine maintenance on a property means year-round attention to the condition of the property, preventative maintenance, and high rental property maintenance costs for the property owner. Now, this is not something that is easy to deal with all year round, especially if you have multiple properties in your portfolio. In this video, we'll be going over everything about maintenance, including different types as well as rental property maintenance expenses. So, to get started, let's go over why maintenance is so important for a rental property. When it comes to maintenance on rental properties, it can be easy to see the immediate effects. However, what many people don't realize is that maintenance goes much further than just fixing something that is broken. When a landlord conducts maintenance on a rental property, they are essentially investing in maintaining the property value. This means that they are investing in their own rental property income by conducting rental property maintenance. One way this applies is because it's the landlord's responsibility to keep the property clean and habitable for the tenants. Not only is this a responsibility, it's also required by many state and local laws regarding rental properties. So, apart from being a solid investment in your properties, maintenance is also required by law. And if landlords do not comply with these laws, there can be various consequences. Since maintenance has to do with the general well-being of the property, there are some consequences associated with not doing it. The following are some of the most common courses of action a tenant can take if maintenance isn't done. These range from the least severe to the most severe. First on this list, and the least severe, is withholding rent payments. Depending on your state's laws and regulations, the tenant may have the right to withhold rent payments from the landlord. This could happen in the case of the landlord not conducting a certain rental property repair the tenant requested. However, this does not necessarily mean the landlord will not receive the payments. The tenant will often place the payments in an escrow account. This way, the landlord or property manager will receive all of the money after the maintenance is done. Next is hiring a third party. If the landlord fails to perform the necessary rental property maintenance in a timely manner, the tenant may hire a third party to take care of it. This is usually the case if the tenant has provided proper notice to the landlord and has granted them ample time. This method would fall completely under the discretion of the tenant, as they will choose the third-party contractor. So it's up to them to choose one that's reasonably priced and one that's trustworthy. The expenses are usually deducted from the next rent payment. Then there's contacting the authorities. In some extreme cases, the tenant may be able to contact local authorities regarding the repairs. This is typically the case only when the problem violates some sort of health code or local building ordinance. Once it reaches this point, the authorities may conduct an inspection of the property. After that, if a violation is found, the landlord can face an order to conduct the repair, as well as extra fines and penalties. Finally, if the lack of maintenance is persuasive and interferes with the tenant's right to live, the tenant may evict themselves. When this happens, the tenant moves out of the rental property and ends the lease agreement. Then, the tenant files a constructive eviction lawsuit against the landlord. It's important the tenant be able to prove the landlord was given proper notice of the required maintenance. They must also prove the condition of the property was uninhabitable and that they left in a reasonable time. If the landlord is found guilty, they may face severe financial repercussions. Now, if you're not sure about your state's landlord-tenant laws and want to find out more, click on the link in the description below to learn everything about your state. Now that we know all about the consequences of not keeping up with maintenance on your properties, let's go over the most common maintenance repairs that are done on a property. Sometimes it can be difficult to distinguish between maintenance that should be done by the tenant and maintenance that should be done by the landlord. Let's clear the confusion. Routine maintenance is the most common maintenance that will be done on a rental property with standard wear and tear. This maintenance includes smaller things that can be done relatively quickly and easily and on a routine basis. This could include landscaping, picking up trash, or other things around the property. The cost of this rental maintenance is often very easy to calculate. There are even a lot of things you can exclude from your budget, like changing the batteries on smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. These are typically the tenant's responsibility, so you don't have to worry about them. On the other hand, the mechanical systems of a property include plumbing, heating, electrical, and gas appliances. Although these systems typically undergo normal wear and tear, things like the water heater or a broken appliance may sometimes require replacement. When a replacement is required, the annual maintenance cost of a property can potentially skyrocket. Another one of the landlord's most important maintenance responsibilities is making sure the property is structurally sound. This means making sure that things such as the roof, the attic, sidewall, driveways, and walls are in good condition. This is also one of the things that can severely drive up yearly maintenance costs. For this reason, it's suggested that landlords take preventative measures like conducting routine inspections. Now, depending on the location of the rental property, a professional property manager may be responsible for handling seasonal maintenance. This could mean pruning trees, removing snow, or cleaning gutters. It's also important to keep the lawn orderly and clean to prevent housing ticks, fleas, or rodents. This is oftentimes taken over by the tenant themselves, but can occasionally be part of the landlord's responsibilities. One of the other things that is always the landlord's responsibility is revamping the paint and the flooring. Repainting a property after a tenant leaves is an amazing way to increase tenant turnover. It's also one of the only options if the previous tenant left the walls in poor condition. The flooring is also something that goes through wear and tear as the years go by. Carpet floors are especially susceptible to damages and suffer the most compared to other types of flooring. In the case of carpet, the best course of action may be to get it cleaned every year by a professional. Now that we know about some of the common repairs landlords are responsible for, let's go over the important part: the money. It's very easy to talk about all the things that need to be taken care of in a rental property. The hard part comes when it's time to pay for them. This is when you would want to have a sound maintenance budget in place. We're going to go over some of the most useful rules to budget maintenance costs. Also, assuming any one of these rules will work perfectly for you is simply a rental property maintenance myth. It's important to analyze each rule and decide which one is best for you, or make your own. Let's talk about the 1% rule. The 1% rule means taking 1% of your total property value and setting that much aside for maintenance every year. For example, if your property is valued at $450,000, you should set aside $4,500 every year for rental property maintenance expenses. The reason this rule is effective is that there is a strong relationship between the value of your home and the cost of maintenance. Here, the relationship is that both factors depend on the price of materials and labor in your region. So, if house prices go up, so will the cost of maintenance. Then, there's the 50% rule. This is a very common rule used to plan out maintenance budgets for rental property maintenance. The rule stipulates that property managers or property management companies should devote 50% of their rental income to maintenance costs. Since this is typically a larger amount, it also goes toward things like taxes, insurance, and utilities. For example, if you take home $1,500 a month in income, you would devote $750 every month to cover all of those expenses. The next way to calculate your maintenance budget is by using a square footage formula. The square footage formula assigns a value of $1 to each square foot your property covers, and you set this much aside each year for maintenance. For example, if your property is 1,500 square feet, you would set aside $1,500 each year for maintenance. And finally, there's the 5x rule. This budgeting rule simply takes the monthly rent and multiplies it 1.5 times. For example, if the monthly rent is $2,500, you would set aside $3,750 for maintenance. To wrap this all up, maintenance is something of which every landlord should be very wary. There are so many benefits of being up to date with maintenance and many drawbacks to not paying much attention to it. Also, it's required by law in many states, so brush up on local and state laws to make sure you are in accordance. If you want to learn how to rehabilitate your rental property, click on the link in the description below. That's it for this video. If you want more real estate content for your business, make sure you check out our YouTube channel for more DoorLoop videos, such as why is a property management system important and short-term rental owners need these tools. Remember to like this video, share it, and of course, subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.